Hi, I'm Andy Bernstein. I'm a psychologist with the Southern Arizona Psychological Association, and we've been asked by the library folks to put together some material to help people deal with some of the stresses and some of the challenges that come up around this end of year holiday season. Um, Katie?
And I'm Katherine Brazaitis, also a psychologist with the Southern Arizona Psychological Association. And I'm very happy to be here, and hopefully, the information and material we present today will be helpful. So, we have been tasked with talking about boundaries, that big, big word we see all over TikTok these days. But how does it apply to the holidays? What does it look like? How might we need it? So Andy, what comes up for you? Where does your mind go when you hear about or think about setting boundaries during the
Well,
holidays?
there are a lot of different kinds of boundaries.
Mm,
We'll talk about that in a minute. But first, I want to just put out there that when you're setting boundaries, what you're trying to do is to be kind and you're sort of taking care of yourself. So you have to have some degree of confidence that you have a right to set these
mhm,
boundaries and that what you're really trying to do is not so much control other people, but create a space in which you feel safe, you feel comfortable, and hope
mhm.
that they conform to that. Although there are some ways to get beyond that if they're not following those boundaries. Katie will talk about that next time round. One example of a boundary is a time boundary. How much time are you willing to spend in certain situations with certain people? People boundaries. Are you willing to spend time with certain people? Do you want to have them involved in an event that you're planning? Will you go to some event that you're invited to if you know that you don't really like a lot of the people there?
Mhm.
How do you deal with boundary setting when somebody is not really sort of following your lead?
Yes, that's a great question because I think we can recognize, oh, there's all these opportunities for me to set boundaries. There's things I know I don't want to do, or there's things that I know I want that I want to ask of somebody else. And then maybe we freeze because how do we communicate that, right? How do we actually kind of assert ourselves and say I deserve to take up some space here, or I deserve to have what's good for me honored, right? That can be really, really intimidating and really daunting for folks, especially when maybe we're not accustomed to having our voice heard or recognized or validated in certain social situations or certain family dynamic situations. So it can be pretty overwhelming and it can be daunting. This is where I like to talk about and use a skill from dialectical behavior therapy called Dear Man. So, just an FYI, DBT, dialectical behavior therapy, loves its acronyms. And so, Dear Man stands for describe, emotion, assert, reinforce, be mindful, appear confident, and negotiate. That's a lot to remember. We're going to include some links, some guidance on where you can find more about this so you don't have to keep repeating this video over and over and over again as you try and remember what all those different letters mean. But Anne, do you think it'd be helpful if I walked through an example of how to use
Absolutely. I
Dear
mean,
Man?
one of another kind of boundary is intellectual boundaries. People want to talk about politics this year, for example.
Yes,
So
yes, a
charged and
lot going
full of,
on in the world.
how would you deal with somebody who starts a conversation that you know is going to trigger you or activate you?
Mhm.
What you do?
Yeah, so great example. I think that's always, no matter what's happening in our country, what's happening in the world, right? Politics and religion are those two big topics that are ripe for conflict during the holiday
Mhm.
season. Um, so breaking down our Dear Man, our D, describe, what we're going to start off doing is we're going to kind of in that with what you were saying around, we want to be kind. We want to live our values of respecting others. So we're going to start off by simply describing the situation. We're going to aim to stick to the facts. So you might say, I hear that you really want to talk about fill in the blank
The
politics,
war in the Middle East.
the war in the Middle East. I hear how impassioned you are about that. I hear you want to talk about that, right? So we're There's no judgment. There's no criticism, right? The key is we're also not putting anybody on the defensive. We're not saying you were wrong, you shouldn't. Why are you doing this? We're just presenting the facts. Then, and I always say for the emotion for our E, it depends on our audience, right? Not everyone is deserving of our vulnerability of our emotions. Maybe in this situation, again, it's a family gathering. Hopefully there's some semblance of safety or trust. So there may not be. Family can be very complex. You can choose to say, I hear that you want to talk about this. I know there's a lot going on in the world. And for me, it's overstimulating. It's just too much, right? Or I'd really like to get a break from being able to talk about that. I kind of just want to focus on something else, right? We're sharing the impact of the facts, which then leads us into our ask, right? We don't want to, we always want to give the other person the opportunity to show up for us by being as clear as possible, right? So saying, maybe, can we table this conversation until after the holidays, right? Or, I'm going to be heading out, around 7 o'clock tonight. Do you mind holding off until I'm not here? Or it might even look like, you know what? You all keep talking about this. I'm going to take the dog for a walk, right?
Which is a great boundary to set sometimes, spatial boundary. Just
exactly
leave the situation that you're
exactly.
I'll be right back. I got to take a break.
Exactly, right. Because sometimes the thing with boundaries is it's not just saying no. It's not just saying stop doing this, right? It's also the other side of the coin of asking for what you need, right? So your ask might be, I'm going to go take a walk. Please respect that. So then we get into our R, right? Which is kind of the sense of like giving people the understanding of why this is important to you, increasing the likelihood that they are going to want to show up for you and support you, right? If you push this, right, it's going to be really hard for me to enjoy this celebration with you, right? Or if you don't respect my need for a break, that might have impacts on when I spend time with you.
So does the R stand for the reason? I mean, this is a rationale for setting the limit in a way.
Technically, it's reinforce, right? Because it's sort of saying it's presenting the contingency, it's presenting the outcome, right? If you don't respect what I'm asking of you, there will be consequences. And again, we're not saying that in a punitive, punishing way. We're presenting facts, right? Actions have consequences. So in an ideal world, we're done, right? We've described the facts. I hear that you really want to talk about this. This is a really important discussion for you. It brings up a lot of meaningful things, and it's just too much for me. So I'm going to ask either, can we take a break from this and you all keep talking about it after I leave? Or, right, if it's really important that everyone talks about it right now, I'm going to go take a walk and give myself that breather. Right? It's important for me not to have these conversations so that I can continue to feel safe with you, so that I can continue to enjoy the holidays with you. Ideally, again, we're done. The person goes, I get it. I hear you. That makes sense. Go take care of you. How often is that the case? So this is where we might need to go into the man portion of what we're talking about, which is, again, being mindful, appearing confident, and negotiating as needed. Some of these things I've already started to weave in. So being mindful is just keeping yourself on track, right? If the other person, again, using the conflict in the Middle East, starts wanting to pull the conversation into sort of a sidetrack, right? Kind of pulling you off the focus of you asserting your limit or your boundary by making a judgment call about you. Why are you being so avoidant? Or you must feel this way, or why, don't you think this is important? Right? Staying mindful to what you are needing and what you are asking for, kind of regardless of what the other person might be throwing at you. We think of the broken record technique here. I'm setting this limit, right? If you're not going to stop the conversation, I'm going to go for a walk. If you're not, okay, I see that you're not stopping the conversation. I'm going to go for a walk, right? Sort of sticking to your script. And as you're doing this, you want to appear confident, right? Even if you don't feel it, this is where we fake it till we make it sometimes, right? Shoulders back, eye contact solid, right? And we're doing our best. And then that's where the negotiation sometimes will have to come in as well, is right? Like maybe the war in Palestine or the conflict in the Middle East, like really, really is important to your family member, right? Maybe they know people there. It's just really important to them, right? And so part of our wanting to honor the other person might be saying, I hear how important this is to you. So again, this is what I've already modeled of I'm going to take a walk. I'm going to respect your need to talk about this, and I'm going to take care of myself by leaving, rather than just sticking, death gripping the you must stop talking about this now.
Mm-hmm.
So that's Dear Man in a nutshell. Very easy for me to say and model in the comfort of my office without any family members around. Much harder to live in practice. And hopefully that gives you at least a starting point for pieces to consider, and options for how you can feel more confident setting limits and boundaries with anyone you might be spending this holiday season with.
And the thread that seems to go through it is to be in tune with your own emotions and your own needs, and
Mm-hmm.
be able to remain mindful of that and use
Yes,
your awareness of what you need to try to influence the space, try to create an environment in which you get
mm-hmm.
what you need, but you're not hurting other people. It's not
Exactly.
something that's punitive or in some way judging. You shouldn't want to talk about the war in the Middle East. It's more having to do with you and your own emotions.
Absolutely.
Well, hopefully people can use these few minutes and take them to heart and think about how they can make their holiday experience more comfortable, more loving, and more meaningful in many ways.
Absolutely.